Red Fave 48, 9/8/25. This is episode 5. Me, a Broadway Gypsy. Hello, media mites and mavens. James Homan here. I had accomplished my dream. Opening night of Hello, Dolly, starring Carol Channing with Eddie Bracken on March 5th, 1978, at the Lunt-Fontanne Theater was a momentous event in my life. Friends from college, Paul and Jerry, who had traveled to many of our tour sites and become known to the cast, flew in from Chicago. They very kindly presented me with a pocket watch that was inscribed Broadway at 30. Chris remained in Los Angeles, but sent a huge bouquet of anthuriums, large red petals with small white erect stamens. The other 35 men in the dressing room referred to them as little boy flowers. I was turning 30 the next month and feeling excited about having achieved my dream. Having saved money on the road, I was able to pay off my college loans and quickly found an orthodontist whom I paid for 18 months to eliminate all the spaces in my upper front set of teeth. I kept the single room only room at the Hotel Dirty Decks until my friend Kevin, who was then doing his third Broadway show, The Magic Show, while rehearsing a workshop production of Sondheim's Sunday in the Park, asked if I would be interested in getting an apartment with him on West 97th Street. We did, and I was happier than I'd ever been. Kevin and I had moved to New York City together and became very close friends. His personality was as joyous as his talents. Big and jolly, red-haired and red-bearded, he was blessed with an amazing tenor voice. He beamed personal qualities that enhanced any production of which he became a part. His last performance was in Les Miserables as the original Jean Valjean understudy. Other Broadway productions included Cats as Deuteronomy, A Doll's Life, I Remember Mama, Sweeney Todd, My Fair Lady, the 20th Anniversary Revival, and The Magic Show, as well as workshop performances of Sunday in the Park and others. We were the only two left out of our original 6 performers who had relocated from St. Louis in 1975, and we were cooking. While all banked checks were cashed, the experience of these shows lingers in Broadway history. There were many more lessons to be learned. Within a few days of beginning rehearsals for Hello, Dolly, I realized how great my luck had been. I was one of fewer than 6 people in this cast of 38 who had never previously worked with Miss Channing and or appeared with her in a previous Broadway production of Gower Champion's masterpiece. It was both my first national tour and first Broadway show. Beginning in Texas, Hello, Dolly was to be the inaugural production opening the Houston Grand Opera's recently constructed home. That was June 24, 1977, a momentous day in my life. The show toured the United States and Canada, including 4 months at the Lunt-Fontanne Theater on West 46th Street in New York. Because our dance captain believed me to be the lightest of the 18 chorus men, weighing only 135 pounds, I was cast as the horse cart driver who delivers Dolly Gallagher Levi on stage in the middle of the first musical number, Call on Dolly. Preset stage right behind a curtain, I would patiently await Miss Channing's walk from her dressing room to sit at the opposite end of the cart. If she had time while we waited for our entrance cue, she would walk up to me and ask questions in that inimitable voice of hers. One evening, as the overture was playing, Miss Channing asked me in her baritone voice, which was as distinctive offstage as it was on, "What's your name, young man? I don't believe we ever worked together before, have we?" she inquired. No, Miss Channing, this is my first production of Hello, Dolly. I do remember seeing Pearl Bailey in her third act monologue after sneaking into the St. James one night, but I've never seen an entire production. However, I did see that movie. That movie is not Gower Champion's musical production, she cautioned. I'm sure you will find our entertainment much more satisfying, she said, and left to assume her position at the end of the cart while mumbling, I can't believe this. He's never seen Hello, Dolly. That night, in the second musical number, when Dolly Levi handed me a small white card and said, short distance hauling, there was a little twinkle in her eye that I'd never seen before. For most of the tour, the physical aspects of the show, sets, props, backdrops, costumes, traveled by trucks to the next city on Sunday evenings. For the first 2 months, every week, the entire cast would be flown to that next city on Monday. Each Tuesday afternoon, we were called for a run-through before opening that evening. This routine over 18 months and 23 North American cities takes a toll. There were only a few stops that included multiple weeks. The drain on the cast was offset only by the weekly paychecks and the fact that as an A-plus tour, we were very well taken care of. I was told by our dance captain that once the show reached Detroit, Michigan, where we had our first 4-week engagement, Ms. Channing had requested that I be the first chorus member to sit out to watch while our male swing covered my show. She wanted me to experience the production as an audience member. How honored I felt to watch her bring such memorable joy into so many people's lives. She seemed honestly excited to hear my comments on what I'd seen and enjoyed, being particularly impressed with the Sunday clothes scene in which the costumes were so splendiferous. I told her how brilliant I thought the end of the number was when the bottom hem of the woman's full skirts puffed out as the ladies lowered their heels to the floor in time with the last musical beat. Yes, to achieve that effect, those dresses were designed with each woman standing in releve on their toes, as they had to do throughout the entire number. Gower was a genius, Miss Channing explained, and scurried back to her seat on the cart. After touring North America for 10 months, on the evening of March 23rd, 1978, I made my Broadway debut in that revival, marking Carol Channing's return to the Great White Way in a role that made her a legend. I officially became an honest-to-God and employed Broadway Gypsy within the incredible community of professional theater artists. Me, the schlemiel from Kenosha, Wisconsin, had achieved his dream. I was the waiter who skewered the papier-mâché turkey carcass in the Waiter's Gallop at the beginning of the second act. I missed that turkey's 2-inch diameter opening only 17 times out of a total of 638 performances. I had never prided myself on getting anything into a hole. Following the Broadway opening night cast party, I had to share my delight with the staff of Ted Hook's backstage. I was the former head waiter returning as a Broadway chorus boy. The shock was theirs. Broadway was very different from summer stock, and certainly no crock, as their goodbye limerick had stated. We partied all night. I don't remember getting home the next morning. Hello, Dolly played Broadway for 4 months at the Lunt-Fontanne Theater. In July 1978, the show closed for 2 weeks, was recast, and our tour continued to Miami and Washington, D.C. before closing on New Year's Eve 1978 in Baltimore. My first truly grand A-plus tour experienced had run for more than a year and a half. Thanks to Hello Dolly, I paid off all my college loans and was able to afford some badly needed orthodontia. Neither of my fully dentured parents had believed dental health was a priority for any of their 3 sons. My 18 months in braces never kept me from working, but it did necessitate having to sign clauses in subsequent contracts saying that I wouldn't smile while in character on stage. Well, this gypsy now needed new 8x10 glossies. 4 days after having my braces removed, I had made an appointment to have photographer Gerard Barnier take 10 rolls of film of me in various sets of clothes. To this day, I have difficulty believing that the person in those pictures is actually me. I explained to my 2 agent friends that I didn't think I could truly use any of Gerard's photos because I would be so disappointing in real life. However, those photos did open doors. 3 weeks after our run of Dolly closed, I was cast in a dinner theater production of The Music Man, along with the actress who played our second Irene Malloy. She was now doing Marion the Librarian. While we worked in Connecticut, we were housed in Springfield, Massachusetts, which was 2 or 3 hours from New York City, allowing us to return almost every weekend. 1 week after closing The Music Man, I was cast in another revival produced by the Goodspeed Light Opera House and entitled The 5 O'Clock Girl. It was a very light-hearted musical that had been written in 1927 by the team of Kalmar and Ruby. I only went to the audition to meet the director of the musical. Her name was Sue Lawless, and she had been a comic partner of Chris's closest friend, Ted Pugh, in an act entitled Sue and Pugh. The show's choreographer was Dan Soretta, a well-known choreographer who specialized in tap, which led me to believe that I didn't have a chance of getting this job. I only wanted to meet Ms. Pugh. As it turned out, the show wasn't a tap show per se. Dan and his assistant Larry were looking for ballroom technique. I wasn't sure who was more surprised, but at 8:30 that evening, I signed a contract for my next show. That show was incredibly well cast, mostly with unknowns, except for the incredible Sheila Smith, a Broadway veteran of many shows, including Follies and Sugar. She played the fictional elegant couturier, Madame Irene, in a brunette wig, which made her practically unrecognizable to Broadway audiences who remembered her only as a blonde. The first run of this show was arguably the zenith of my career. Following a summer of fun in East Haddam, Connecticut, at that historic theater which first produced the Broadway classics Man of La Mancha and Annie, among others, the cast kept hearing that 5 O'Clock was destined to become Goodspeed's next imported musical to Broadway. Alas, while the show got excellent reviews from New York critics, nothing concerning a transfer ever materialized. Then I contracted a summer-fall tour of Sugar to Zev Buffman's Southern Circuit with Oscar-winning Don Amici and Broadway legends Bobby Morse and Larry Kert. My only memorable experience in that show was during rehearsals when I introduced myself to Mr. Amici and explained that we were both from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Without speaking a word, he simply turned, walked away from me, and never spoke to me again throughout the entire 4-month run. Returning home from the Sugar tour, I found a message on my service from a woman with whom I toured with Dolly, requesting that I come to an audition the next day. She was now choreographing and needed dancers. That day, I was then hired as one of 12 male, quote, rockers, unquote, to dance in 2 Radio City spectaculars with the Rockettes. The first was with Ginger Rogers, and the second with Carol Lawrence. I tell you, the best seat in that music hall is on that stage. Take the tour. The view is an amazing sight. Over a year and a half later, in November 1980, the 5 o'clock girl went back into rehearsal with only two of the original six principal leads. Goodspeed Opera House had sold the rights to a producer whose only previous production credit had been Bugs Bunny on Ice. Indeed, an omen of things to come. Six of the principal roles were recast, and this second contract included tryouts in Boston and Philadelphia, following our final tryout in Philly. The cast was transported via Amtrak back to New York. We had all heard the city rumors and read the theater papers that our production was scheduled to open on Broadway in early 1981, but we had to wonder who would be doing it. Our contracts had ended, and none of us had signed anything related to a future production. On that short train ride, our production stage manager walked casually through the car to instruct each person in the cast to be at Broadway Arts Rehearsal Studios the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. to sign a new contract for the Broadway run. Our show had been booked into the old Helen Hayes Theater on West 86th Street, a structure that our cast affectionately called, quote, Our Lady of Chipped Paint, unquote. It was one of three theaters scheduled for demolition to accommodate the Times Square renovation project. Ours would be the final musical to play the old Helen Hayes Theater, where the Marriott Marquis Hotel now occupies the space. Our new producers had refused to pay for a technical run-through for our New York City stagehands prior to the show's opening. As a result, on opening night of previews, in the third scene of the first act, the cue button was pushed to mechanically move John Lee Beatty's deco-designed restaurant set into place. This newly added mechanical operation was to guide three levels of beautifully etched transparent backdrops, complete with transparent deco chairs, tables fully set with crystal place settings, stemmed goblets, and silverware. It malfunctioned. As the waiter in this scene, I was handed a broom and dustpan and told to sweep up the shattered debris before the show's first major dance number began. For 20 minutes, that audience watched patiently as I swept up the wreckage. Are you picking up the waiter theme here in my performing career? Well, without a day off in 3 weeks, 5 O'Clock Girl opened for previews with an advance ticket sale of exactly $47.50. We opened during a terribly cold winter in January 1981, during a newspaper strike, with no stars above the title, and with a ticket sale of one. Thank you very much, Georgia Engel. After religiously climbing the many required steps on 2 bloodied knees to worship at this altar called Broadway, I became pitifully aware of the many forces over which one simply has no control. At the end of that preview, I stood in the basement with our director and cried. 5 O'Clock Girl ran for 2 weeks. 1 week later, the choreographer of 5 O'Clock Girl, Dan Soretta, telephoned to ask me and my dance partner to join his next project. That project, another production from Goodspeed, was Little Johnny Jones, a revival of the 1904 musical with book, music, and lyrics by the legendary George M. Cohan. Mr. Soretta stipulated, I'll have to place you on the end in the back in the dark because We were the newest course members, but he added, I can assure you that you'll get paid as much as those up front in the middle and the light. The show will be touring for about a year before opening on Broadway next spring. I hope you'll say yes. And how would anyone say no to that? What's more, a phone call was the easiest way to get a gig ever. Johnny Jones, starring Tommy Hulse, had been the hit of Goodspeed's 1980 summer season. That cast remained complete except for its star, who had scheduling conflicts. This newest version was set to start rehearsals in April '81 with a new star, David Cassidy. I dutifully packed my bags and readied myself for another adventure on the road, and happily sublet my apartment again to Mary McDonald prior to her Oscar nomination for Dancing with Wolves. Traveling with Mr. Cassidy became a masterclass in how not to behave in musical theater. As our star, something was amiss. Let me simply say that David traveled with his own private physician. It seemed that if you had starred in your own television series and had achieved the status of teen idol in your younger days, one could only deal with all this new professional musical theater rigmarole pharmaceutically. Enough said. 8 months later, in December, our tour closed for a 2-week break during the holidays. Since I'd sublet my West 90th Street 4th floor walk-up, I reserved a room in the West Side YMCA and waited to resume rehearsals mid-January. We were called back into rehearsals with Donny Osmond in the lead role. Sets were improved, costumes redesigned, lighting designs were made more complex, and now we had a star who was not only talented but also committed to a project to which our cast and crew had been dedicated for years. Mr. Osmond is one of the most beautiful men I have ever met. He had skin I wanted to taste. Incredibly talented. He was Yankee Doodle delicious, to rephrase a song from that show. After 5 weeks of previews in the Alvin Theater with standing ovations on a nightly basis, we opened on a rainy evening in March 1982 with a 50-piece marching band on West 52nd Street playing Cohan selections for our first night's audience. We all actually thought we'd get at least a 6-month run out of this gig. Audience never lied, did they? Unfortunately, none of the New York reviews were kind. The critics seemed to harbor a bias against Goodspeed Opera House, attempting to gain yet again a respectable foothold within the larger pond of New York theater. One of the reviews said that Mr. Osmond actually looked like his sister in drag. The morning following our opening, each cast member received a phone call from the stage manager asking us to return to the theater to reclaim any personal property. Johnny Jones closed on opening night. And that concludes this podcast. Please check in next week for episode 8, Crossing the Footlights. At 35, with 3 Broadway shows on my resume, I was still seen as a character juvenile by casting offices. Did I really want a future of silly hats and funny ties? As a performing artist, I realized that I'd become the president, the CEO, the CFO, the publicist, the head of marketing, and everything else for one brand, me. I spent the entire summer on Tar Beach in tears. Remaining naive and true to your art is primary, but I was finding that naivete at 35 wasn't working for me. My success had brought with it many insights. I needed more security than American musical theater could offer. So I transitioned to something I thought would bring me more security: corporate America. Thank you for your time and interest. Until next week, then, be kind, do good, be happy, and love one another, remembering to coexist with tolerance while embracing similarities and respecting differences. Thank you.